Monkey D. Garp is a major One Piece character that appears in several arcs of the story. Netflix's live-action One Piece series, however, took Garp's role to an entirely new level. In the show, Garp is arguably the most relevant character outside the Straw Hats and has significant material in every episode of the show. This video will look at just how far Netflix went in making Luffy's grandfather their biggest deviation from the original manga. For disclosure, this video will attempt to give only minimal spoilers about the original manga, so that it can also be viewed by people who've only watched the live-action series. While Garp in the manga gets introduced in the East Blue Saga like in the show, he only appears in a few cover story pages without even revealing his face. After this, Garp largely disappears from the story until his full character introduction dozens of volumes later. Netflix's version of One Piece significantly extended and altered Garp's role in the beginning of the story. At the very start of the first episode, Garp is the first character to speak in the show as he oversees Roger's execution. In the original manga, Garp is not present during this event. Like in the show, Garp was the marine who captured Roger, and the two did have a discussion before Roger's death. However, in the manga, a week before Roger's execution, Garp was busy fighting one of Roger's pirate rivals at Marine HQ. Considering the distance between this location and Logtown, and that Garp likely had to recover from his wounds, it is very likely that he did not attend the execution in the original story. Later at the end of the first episode of the Netflix show, Garp gets a report that Luffy has raided a marine base in East Blue, and he decides to go investigate the scene. While Garp also goes to East Blue to arrest Captain Morgan in the manga, it is unknown if he knows of Luffy's involvement in the incident. It is actually possible that Garp in the manga only heard of Luffy becoming a pirate after his first bounty was released, whereas on the show, he discovers this by interrogating Kobe. This is also the part of the show where the Garp storyline completely deviates from the original. While Garp on the show takes Kobe and Helmeppo under his wing like he does in the manga, he then decides to chase Luffy across the East Blue. In the manga, Garp is not interested in capturing his grandson and only does it after his superiors order him, though even in that case he is not very serious about it. One possible reason for this change is that Garp on the show heard about Luffy becoming a pirate before he had earned his first bounty. This could have prompted him to act fast to stop Luffy before he became a wanted man. It is later revealed that live-action Garp chases Luffy because he is desperate to prevent his grandson from dying on the seas. This is somewhat reminiscent of a scene in the manga, where Garp laments his foster kids becoming criminals and the danger that puts them in. While on the seas, Garp on the show also has several added scenes where he bonds with Kobe and tries to teach him to become a good marine. While Garp and Kobe share a similar bond in the manga, much of Garp's tutelage is either told off via flashbacks or in passing. Like with Garp, Kobe's role is also very much extended on the show, with him being a far more prevalent part of the East Blue Saga than in the manga. Garp on the show is nothing short of relentless in his pursuit of Luffy. He manages to follow the Straw Hats trail to Syrup Village, Baratie, and Arlong Park, three arcs in which Garp in the manga did not even appear in. In Syrup Village, Garp on the show actually catches up to Luffy and demonstrates his signature skill of throwing cannonballs at greater force than actual cannons. This is also where the other Straw Hats on the show find out that the hero of the Marines is Luffy's grandfather, something that happened much later in the actual manga. During Baratie, Garp on the show actually gets even more desperate and contacts Dracula Mihawk, a warlord of the sea, to capture Luffy. This is a very interesting action from Garp, who in both the manga and the show clearly has a disdain for pirates and prefers handling things personally. Most Marines also are not particularly fond of the warlords and vice versa. What's more, Mihawk in particular is noted to be one of the warlords the government has trouble ordering around. In this sense, it would probably make more sense for Garp to have simply contacted some of the other Marines in the area to capture Luffy. For example, we know that other strong Navy HQ Marines were in East Blue at this time in both the manga and on the show. Another interesting question is whether Garp would even have the status to order warlords around. In what little we've seen in the manga, Vice Admirals could almost be described as being subservient to the warlords, and require world government edicts to command them. Yet, to its credit, Mihawk in the Netflix show later decides to stop pursuing Luffy because he's interested to see his rise as a pirate. This could imply that Mihawk was simply entertaining Garp. After all, he literally says that he was simply killing time when Garp called him. It is, however, very interesting to note that on the show, it was Garp who sent Mihawk to Baratie. For reference, these two characters have never even spoken to one another in the manga. It also makes Garp be the reason why Zoro and Mihawk's duel happened, rather than the two meeting by mere coincidence like in the manga. After Garp's plan of having Mihawk capture Luffy fails, he personally follows Luffy's trail to Baratie on the show. At the restaurant, Garp ends up meeting Zeph and talking to him about Luffy. This is also very noteworthy, as like with Mihawk, Garp and Zeph have never interacted in the manga. What's more, Garp actually recognizes Zeph as Red Leg Zeph, an infamous pirate from the Grand Line. This actually makes a lot of sense, because Zeph was an active pirate in the same era when Garp was in his prime more than 20 years ago. Garp on the show actually decides not to arrest Zeph. While Garp in both the manga and the show hates criminals, he clearly isn't absolute in this. Even outside Roger and his family, Garp in the manga is willing to overlook the transgressions of other criminals if he considers them good people. Though for a more simple answer, it could be that Garp overlooked Zeph only because he gave him food. You should also take this opportunity to follow Zeph's code by pressing the like button. It is currently starving for clicks and might not make it if not given sustenance. After Baratie, Garp follows the Straw Hats to Nami's village where he finally has his reunion with Luffy. This scene is actually reminiscent of Garp and Luffy's reunion in the manga, though it happens far earlier in the Netflix show. In the show, Garp overpowers Luffy, but after seeing that his grandson is not backing down, decides to let him go. Garp also admits that he was only testing if Luffy was strong enough to be a pirate, which is also somewhat similar to their reunion in the manga. As a side note, this scene also demonstrates Garp being able to hurt Luffy with a punch despite him being rubber, which is a reference to a power introduced much later in the One Piece story. Next, this video will address some of the cosmetic differences and similarities between Garp in the manga and on the show. The most notable difference is that Garp in the manga possesses the immense height of 287 centimeters, which is more comparable to polar bears than actual people, while Vincent Reagan, the actor who plays Garp in the show, is significantly shorter at 184 centimeters. Garp in the manga also has a considerably bulkier frame than he has on the show. This, however, is not a change specific to Garp, but to all characters on the show having proportions more akin to real-life humans. Garp's ship on the show is far bigger than it is in the manga, with both its style and size being more similar to a modern-era destroyer or a cruiser, rather than the smaller wooden ship Garp sails in the manga. Both versions of the ship do, however, have the similar dog-shaped helm. Lastly, Garp's wardrobe is very faithful to the original manga, where Garp more than 20 years ago wore a black suit which he has since changed into a pure white one in the present story. In summary, Garp on the show is not all that different from his manga counterpart. His personality, mannerisms and design are rather faithful to the original source material, nor are his actions, with the possible exception of him relying on Mihawk, that different from what Garp in the manga would do. What is however different is the incomparably larger role Garp on the show has compared to the source material. This is also not only relevant to Garp's character but to the plot of the show as a whole. Despite the One Piece story involving hundreds upon hundreds of characters, the plot for most of the manga focuses almost solely on the Straw Hats, with readers only getting occasional glimpses to the other characters in the world. This is something that was especially relevant for the East Blue part of the story, but is arguably something that has only truly started to change in the currently releasing final saga. While this is not something that only happens to Garp in the show, he is the character we pan to the most when the story shifts focus away from the Straw Hats. The answer to the question of why Garp was made such a prevalent part of the live-action show can be found from the showrunner, Steven Maeda. In a Variety interview, Maeda explains the reason as being twofold. For one, he wanted the show to have an antagonist in pursuit of Luffy, in order to increase the stakes of the show. For another, the reason why Garp was so obsessed with chasing Luffy lent the show a greater sense of mystery according to Maeda. After all, the viewers who've never read the manga or watched the anime have no idea why this high-ranking marine is so driven by the idea of chasing Luffy. Maeda also goes on to say that Eiichiro Oda gave them his blessing to do this change. Whether or not the Garp change was a worthwhile addition is up to each viewer. However, it does set a precedent for any further seasons the show could have. This following section will have major spoilers regarding the story events that happen after our long park. If you want to avoid these spoilers, skip to this part of the video. Once the Straw Hat crew finally enter the Grand Line, they are followed by both the Marines led by Captain Smoker and the Buggy Pirates in the manga. Yet, we only ever get small glimpses into either party's journeys unless they are on the same island as the Straw Hats. For example, Buggy makes only one appearance in the first 40 volumes of the Grand Line part of the story. If Netflix is going to produce further seasons of One Piece, they could provide additional focus to these characters. Ace is another character that could get this type of focus, where the show could further showcase his hunt for Blackbeard in the first half of the Grand Line. While we see Ace in both the Drum Island and Alabasta arcs, the remainder of his hunt for Blackbeard is showcased only in the cover stories. Alternatively, similar to Garp, Ace could be further integrated into the Alabasta saga in the show like he was in the anime adaptation. For my brief personal opinion on Garp's role in the show, I rather liked his added scenes with Kobe, Mihawk and Zeph. Garp's always been one of the story's standout characters and possibly one of the most interesting picks for a main character if there would ever be a One Piece prequel. With regards to Steven Maida's thoughts about Garp's role adding stakes and mystery to the show, I do however think it will only work on viewers who have not read the manga or watched the anime. Knowing that Garp is Luffy's grandfather who only wants good things for his grandson before watching the show rather removes both the mystery and the stakes of him chasing after Luffy. I also find it very interesting that Garp, after years of irrelevance, all of a sudden has such major focus in both the manga and the Netflix show in 2023. It is not exactly impossible that Oda himself got inspired by seeing the development of the live-action adaptation and decided to also give material to Garp in the manga. For example, allegedly, Oda based one of the Straw Hats on a voice actor that worked on the anime adaptation of One Piece. If you've enjoyed this breakdown of Garp's character, consider watching my video on Shanks, where I go over why, despite what he showed even in the live-action show, sword fighting may not be his only means of engaging in combat. Thanks for watching the video to the end.